If you stay past this intro, I will grow facial hair for you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cornertwist into the series class of Sub 20, where I will be teaching you how to be Sub 20 as fast as possible. In the last video, we talked about everything you will need to know to be Sub 20, and we covered what we will be getting into. And if you did watch that video, then you know that today's video is going to be going over the permutations. Permutations of the last layer, or PLLs for short, is the last step of CFOP, and so far in the series you've only been introduced to a very introductory stage of PLL. We want to be moving away from 2-look PLL and just moving into 1-look, where you would only use one algorithm to solve the entire top layer. As I'm sure that you can understand, just using one algorithm and only recognizing one set of patterns is going to be much more efficient than doing two algorithms and recognizing two sets of patterns. So in the next video, I'll be giving you all the best algorithms in my opinion for PLLs, but this video is going to be more about learning how to recognize the PLLs in the first place. So without further ado, let's get into it. So if you are familiar with the series so far, we've only talked about PLLs in one video, and that is the first video that we did. In the first episode, I gave a very elementary example of how to solve PLL. What 2-look looks like on PLL is you would find a specific pattern, mainly in these headlights. You would put them on the back and then insert a particular algorithm. Upon completion of that algorithm, you would come up with something like this. From this point, you would normally align all these colors, and then you would find out which flow these middle caps are going. And then you would put in one more algorithm that corresponds to it, and then you would solve your PLL stage. Now sometimes if you get done with the first step in 2-look, you end up with a color pattern like this. You have 4 sets of headlights with the similar colors in between. Or you might come across the other one where you still have 4 sets of headlights, but the opposite colors are in between this time. So far you might only think that you know one PLL that solves the last layer completely. But it turns out that you actually know 2 algorithms that would solve the last layer potentially. And I'm not just talking about this one, because you actually have 2 different algorithms that you would use to solve the ones where first the center caps are flowing this way, and then you have one algorithm for the instance where all the center caps are flowing this way. Even though you would use 2 different algorithms for these, this is still considered the same perm, the U-perm. We'll get into the differences here in a moment. Those weren't the 2 algorithms that I was referring to though, as you know one more. I'm sure you may have noticed that sometimes whenever you get to this stage and you have the 2 headlights that you put on the back, you can then put in the algorithm, and then upon completion, you might actually have a solved cube like this. If you've noticed this happen and you don't know why, it's because you've actually inputted the algorithm that corresponds with the A-perm, whenever you got an A-perm. Whenever you have the particular pattern that goes like this, all the way across the cube, then this is what is referred to as an A-perm, and if you put in that algorithm that you know already, then you will have a solved cube. And it's the same way for how it works on this one. You just see the pattern on the top, you know which one to put in, and then you have a solved cube once you're done with it. So as it turns out, you are actually very familiar with 2 different perms already, and there's actually 12 of them altogether, so now we're going to explore all the others. But first, before we do that, we're going to talk about the terminologies that make up perms. The 4 different distinguishing patterns on each side of the cube are as follows. So the first pattern is whenever you have 3 matching color stickers in a row like this, that is what you would refer to as a bar. The second distinguishing pattern is whenever you have an incomplete bar like this, where you have 2 colors that are matching and then one is either similar or opposite. These 2 matching colors are what I would refer to as a brick. Then of course you're already familiar with the headlights, where you have 2 matching colors with an opposite or similar color in the middle. And then you might have a case where you don't have any of those distinguishing factors going on, where you just have 3 random colors in a row. So each permutation is going to have a mixture of each of those patterns on every side of the cube. So let's go back to that first one that we mentioned just a moment ago, the A-perm. What makes this an A-perm is that we have 2 bricks that are just like this, where they're kind of connecting right here. That's just 2 sides of the cube. The other 2, this one doesn't have anything, while the other side has headlights. So whenever you see that pattern across the cube, where you see headlights, brick, connecting brick, and then nothing, you would know that this is an A-perm. And then you can put in the algorithm that corresponds with it and have a solved cube at the final product of it. Now there are actually 2 different kinds of A-perms. They're both the same in terms of the patterns, but one's on the right side and one's done from the left side. So as you can see here, the 2 bricks intersect on the left side right here, which makes this an A-perm. Now let's take a look at this one, where you have two intersecting bricks right here, nothing on this side, and the headlights on the back. This is the same thing as before, only this intersecting block here is on the right side of the cube rather than the left. That would make this an A B perm. So like I said, there are only 12 perms, but some of them have the mirror versions like I just showed you. Because some of these have mirrors to them, it looks like we have more than 12 perms, but really we just have 12 with mirrors. Here's a list of all 12 perms. We'll go down the list alphabetically. We have the A perm, which does have a mirror. So we have 2, which is A perm, and then the second is A B perm. The second one is E perm, and that one does not have a mirror, and neither does the F perm. The fourth permutation is the G perm, and the G perms trip people up sometimes because there are 4 different ones. It looks intimidating, but there's actually only 2, as 2 of them are mirrors. You have the GA perm, and then the GB perm, as well as the GC perm and the GD perm. Next up you have the JA perm, which is also mirrored, so you have JA and then JB. Following that you have the N perm, which is also mirrored, so you have NA and then NB. Next up you have the R perm, which again is mirrored, so you have RA and RB. Next up is the T perm, and that one is not mirrored. Then you come to the U perm, and that one is mirrored, so you have a UA and UB. Then you have the V perm, not mirrored. Then the Y perm, which is also not mirrored. And finally the Z perm, which is not mirrored. So if you look at that list, you have actually about 20 different perms to learn, but like I said, most of them are mirrors. That means that you could potentially learn 20 different algorithms to solve each and every different variation of these perms, but really you could only do it with just 12 and learn to mirror those. I'm a little bit more ambidextrous than most people, so I do use mirrored algorithms a lot more, but it might actually be helpful to learn different algorithms for the mirror cases, and we'll talk more about that in the next video. But now let's go down the list of those perms and find out what makes each of those different. So again, we did already cover the A perm just now, where you have the headlights on the back, no defining features, a brick, and then another brick right here. Alright, next up down the list alphabetically, we have the E perm. The E perm's fancy because you don't have any defining features, they're all just random colors. You've got no bars, no bricks, no headlights, they're all just random. Next up, which is very similar to the E perm, you have 3 sides with nothing on them, but then on the 4th side you have a complete bar. Next up you have the G perm. So this is the GA version, where you have a set of headlights right here, a brick on this side, nothing here, and then nothing here. This one is GA, as you're looking at the brick, it's on this side of the cube. But if we look at the mirror, where now we have the headlights here, the brick here, nothing here, and nothing here, this is now the GC perm. So like I said, they both can take the same algorithm, or you can learn different ones. Alright, now going back to GB, we have again the headlights, but then now instead of the brick being here, the brick is moved over to the side, and nothing is replaced here. Then on the opposite side of the cube, you also have a pattern of nothing. So it goes headlights, nothing, brick, nothing. And this one is the GB version. Of course you have the mirror, which is GD, where you have the headlights here, nothing here, and then the brick is on the left side of the cube rather than the right, and then nothing here on the side. I'm sure you're familiar with this one as you run into it a lot with 2Look. This one's the one where you have the similar color in between the 2 matching headlights on every side of the cube. This one is the H perm. Next up is the J perm. The J perm is defined by 1 big block on one side, followed by 3 sets of bricks. You may notice that each of these bricks is on one side of the cube, so this brick's on the left side, so is this brick, and then so is this brick. And then of course we have the mirror for that one, so again you have the bar here, and then brick on the right side of the cube this time, as well as this brick, and then this brick, all on the right side. Next up we have the NA perm, and this one is mirrored. This is the NA version, where you have a brick here, a brick here, a brick here, and a brick here. Then of course on the NB perm, it's just the opposite of that, where instead of on the right side of the cube, the bricks are on the left. So brick here, brick here, brick here, and brick here. The N perms are very similar to the J perm, but remember on the J perm you have the complete bar on one side, where on the N perm you don't have any bars. Alright, then next up you have the R perm. The R perm is made up of one side being headlights, one side being a brick, one side being nothing, and then another side being nothing. And this of course is the RA version. The RB is just the same, only you have the exact pattern on the right side of the cube rather than the left. You have headlights again, brick here again, nothing here, and then nothing here. Next up is the T perm, and it looks a lot like the R perm, only you have headlights here, a brick here, nothing here, and instead of having nothing on this side of the cube, you have another brick. So a headlight where 2 bricks are touching it, like this. This is another one of the ones that you're most familiar with, and this is the UA perm. It's made up of the complete bar on the back, followed by 3 sets of headlights. And in the UA version, all the center caps are flowing in this direction, so counterclockwise. The UB is the exact same thing, only you have the flow going clockwise this time. Next on the list is the V-perm. The V-perm has nothing on 2 sides, but then on the other 2 it has 2 bricks that are connecting. This looks very similar to the A-perm if you're looking at it from this angle, only the A-perm has headlights, where this one does not. Next on the list we come to the Y-perm, and it's very similar to the V-perm, only you have 2 bricks here and they're not connecting here. They're kind of spaced out with this guy in between them. So you have brick here, and then on these 2 sides you have nothing. And then we come to the last one on the list, which is the Z-perm. The Z-perm is another solved corners case where you have 4 sets of headlights, but instead of the middles being similar colors, they're opposite colors. Keep note that all 4 of these are opposite colors and not just some of them, as you can get these confused with U-perms if you're not careful. The difference here is that you have opposite, and on the U-perm you might have one here that is similar while these 2 are opposite. Keep in mind that the U-perm also has the bar on the back, while the Z-perm just has 4 sets of headlights. Yes ma'am and or sir, those are all of the permutations. Now that you've seen them, you can comfortably move into the next video where we will be looking at all of the algorithms for solving each of those permutations. Don't worry if you don't memorize them all in this video, as you're really going to be memorizing them once you start putting into practice those algorithms. Trust me, it'll be a lot easier once you start putting your mind to recognizing these cases and putting in the corresponding algorithms. It may look like there's a lot here at first, but it's really not that bad. One more thing I want to introduce you to that we will be talking about in the next video as well is the concept of AUTs. AUT stands for the augmentation of the last layer, and that's just a fancy way of saying the last little turn or a couple turns that you make upon completion of the algorithm that you put in. Let's hop back to our UB perm for a second. So by now you know that if you have each of these headlight colors matching these side colors, like this, then once you put in the algorithm, you will have a solved cube, like this. But let's take a look at this again, and instead of all of the colors being matched up like they are now, we're going to misalign them by 1 turn. Now we can go ahead and put in the algorithm, but you may notice that all of these colors need to be moved over 1 upon completion. That last little turn there is the AUT that we have to input at the end of the algorithm. And like I said, we'll be talking about that more in the next video, so the last thing we have to talk about are the pairings of all of these permutations. There are 3 different factions or camps that each of these permutations sit in. There are 3 permutations that sit within the solved corners camp. These would include the U-perm, H-perm, and Z-perms. There is a 4th one if you discount the solved cube. Next up you have the diagonal swap permutations. There are 4 permutations that sit within that camp, and those are the E, N, V, and Y perms. That leaves the last camp, which is the adjacent swap cases. And every other perm that was not mentioned falls within this camp. That would include the A-perm, the E-perm, the F-perm, the G-perms, the J-perms, the R-perms, and the T-perm. Knowing the camps that those sit in aren't really important right now, but they will be later on in the series, so just keep them in mind. So yeah guys, that brings us to the end of the video. By now you are familiar with every one of the perms, and in the next video we'll be talking about how to actually solve each of them, so be prepared for that. That's all for this one. Go ahead and get out of here. Bye. Alright, next up on the list we have the imperms, but unfortunately the imperms are trash.